Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Hector Takami and I'll introduce some initial slides and will be your moderator. Thanks to join us and we're excited to be here and I'm excited also to be hosting this session. Also, let me please introduce today's speaker, Vaibhav Misra. Vaibhav is our solution architect at Stambia and he has a great technical background and trajectory. He has presented hundreds of webinars, so today he's going to share how to create value and solution. I'm sure he is going to capture and maintain your attention on this interesting webinar concept. Okay. Before to start, let me talk some housekeeping items briefly. Well, first, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. We're going to send you an email, and through this link, you are going to make a replay mode. Next, also, we love to hear from you guys during this presentation. So we have in the bottom side of your in your screen, you will have the part of the chat for make some questions. And we'll be answering the question at the end of the session. And of course, if we don't, for any reason, we cannot answer it, well, we'll be sure to follow afterwards. And last, I encourage you to share the replay webinar with the social networks, LinkedIn, Twitter, as possible at your discretion to let others know about this great solution, okay? So I would like to start seeing the next slides and start this initial webinar, okay? Vaibhav, could you help me to go to the next slide? And well, let me tell you about Stambia. Stambia, we are a software manufacturing company and we provide an agile, flexible, and new generation data integration. We're a company that we only do the data integration part. The team that we are handling, we are composed by data experts and we're a scale-up company, self-funded, and we're a very interesting growth to our footprint. Today, we have a presence in Europe, Asia, lately Americas, and Latin America. We have proven technology because we are in more than 200 customers. The DNA of Stambia is based on customer and value-oriented, providing innovation, implementing and understanding the most valuable use cases for our customers, like cost reduction, have information on time, improve performance, and their initiatives around this. And going to the next slide, Vaibhav, I'm going to remind you that what is the reason that we are doing this kind of webinars. You see that it's important to review some predictions. It's important to know, to be aware about how digital world is moving around. The number of new and different technologies always are evolving, increasing, and changing. We need to keep an eye on what is the possible impact in our business models. And if we are digitalizing something, just be aware that we are and we need the experience of the researchers of today experts. Well, imagine that just save the 50% of the time of the cost to building some digital platform. Well, this is something interesting considering the data integration topic and sounds very good. Also, some of the predictions you will see if you are in the strategy to generate and to implement an hype strategy. Well, the power of this strategy is important to see the benefits by what Gartner say. Okay, let's jump to the agenda, and I remind you again to feel free to ask questions. Let me hand the mic over to Vaibhav. Welcome again, Vaibhav, and go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Hector. Hello and welcome, everyone. First of all, thank you for joining and taking out time and joining this webinar. Without wasting any time, let's jump on to the agenda of this webinar. As a first topic, I will give you a quick brief on Stambia approach. Many of you would have seen Stambia for the first time or have just gone through the quick approach of Stambia. So just a reminder, and this will help when I'm conducting some of the demos for some of the topics. It will be easy to understand. Next, we'll talk about the hybrid integration platform offering in Stambia. We'll use a small example and execute that, and further discuss about Stambia being also a unified platform. We will, as part of this, conduct a small demo, a use case related to Kafka and Spark streaming. At the end, we are going to sort of introduce you to a migration tool that we have recently designed that converts all your complex SQLs, in case of Teradata, your BTEQs, to a Stambia GUI in the form of mappings and processes. And at the end, I will open this webinar for questions. So without much ado, let's get started to the first topic. A very simple example, to understand how Stambia design works. What you see here is a simple mapping where we join data coming from a flat file. You join it with the data coming from a table. You push it to Teradata, or in this mapping, you're writing some transformation rules, as you can see. And then what happens is the entire logic remains inside the templates. So you don't see too many moving pieces in your designs. What you do as a user is select the template properties really quickly, choose them, and then you start your execution. So a template property can be accessed quickly. You can choose what is your load method when it comes to Teradata. You can choose other properties to configure. You're done with the loading configuration. Then you decide how do you want to integrate your data. You select, again, you don't write any code. You just decide what kind of options do you want to choose out of this template. And then finally, you execute this mapping. So this is a very simple, not too many moving parts and not much of written code that you have to handle. Once this is executed, let's just quickly take a look how it looks in the background. So you can imagine there is a server where you have the TTUs installed, and you keep the Stambia runtime on the same server. You have your source files you are getting from any upstream system. When you execute the mapping, Stambia extracts the data out of the table, and then based on your loaders, let's just say TPT loader, you are inserting data into Teradata. Once this data is ingested, then comes the part where this stage data from the flat file and RDBMS is now used, and a BTEQ is executed as part of it. Finally is populated into the table. So the important thing here is Stambia is not just used for the ingestion, but further down the line, if you have certain BTEQs, certain transformations, certain movements of data, joining, union, etc., that if you do in the Stambia GUI, that will be also executed inside Teradata. So this is a very brief approach on how Stambia works when you execute things through your designs. Now, as the next topic, as we've seen, a lot of customers are moving some part of the data to cloud. They already might have, a cloud, and then they want to add multi-cloud. They want to use multiple cloud vendors for specific, purposes, for specific data needs. So let's take a look at how Stambia can act as a hybrid integration player in this scenario. So just to move ahead, or before I move ahead, we have to quickly go through the Stambia architecture. Stambia has just three components. The first one being on the left side is the designer. So this is the component which the developers or the designers would be using. They would be configuring their metadata, source and targets, creating mappings, execution, etc. The second component is the runtime. So this is an important component. Since Stambia is a pure ELT, this component is a very light weight component. So you can place it on premise, run your designs or run your pipelines on premise. You choose to bring in a part of your data, move that to cloud. You can put that runtime in the production environment on cloud. You can have multi-cloud, so then you have several runtime instances placed on different clouds and on-premise. So you can work in a hybrid or a multi-cloud environment. These runtimes would be talking to each other, and to manage these runtimes and manage the execution or deployment on these runtimes, you have the third component on the right-hand side, which is the web interface called production analytics. So this is the web interface. You log in, you manage all your runtimes placed on premise, on cloud. You manage different configurations on these runtimes. You deploy on these runtimes. You schedule and monitor. So pretty much all the production operational activities is what you do through this third component. So it's very important to understand that you don't need a specific server for these runtimes. These can be a part of your environment, and you can run your designs and deploy them on these runtimes. Next, the fact that Stambia has exclusive integration capabilities built around, let's just say, the big three I would mention. The Amazon Web Service, Microsoft Azure, GCP. So these could be just taking into consideration a Teradata instance on one of these, let's say a Teradata instance on either Amazon or Azure, and further whenever we see it on Google Cloud. So Stambia is built for built capabilities for all of these cloud vendors, and specific to Teradata also, we have updated or enhanced the integration templates. Some very quick bullet points before we move to a use case. The solution works with all types of storages. If you want to quickly import or export data, set up pipelines to and from these storages, you can do that. As I mentioned earlier, cloud solution not limited just to Teradata, but we have specific capabilities around AWS, Azure, and GCP. And then the fact that since it's a templatized solution, you have a better, sort of customization opportunity to add more innovation to your existing integration capability. So what I would take as a first demo in this series is a very small example that I had discussed earlier. I'm going to have a scenario where you have everything on-prem, but then you decide, let's say you have to build sort of a data lake, and right now you were extracting data and putting it to Teradata, but you have a lot of source files or systems, different applications. Now you want to first stage them to S3 and bring everything to S3, and then maybe push some of the meaningful information that you intend to in the data warehouse. So how easy or how simple do you have to make a lot of changes to your current integration if you introduce anything, or maybe an example of multi-cloud, if you bring two clouds and then you are exchanging data, how would it look like in Stambia? So I will give you a very simple example. So this is the Stambia designer. I was talking about the first component. I have the Teradata metadata here. So I am running 1620 VM here. So I would be connected to that with a configuration. I have a particular table. I will just start to check whether it has any data. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly pull up a mapping, which does the same thing that we were talking about. You take a file, you take a table, do a join, and then you use the TPT inserter to load the data, and then you integrate further based on the integration approach set here. So I would connect to my local runtime. The TTU are installed on my local, so I can execute this particular mapping. What I see now is I'm taken to the template view. This is where the load templates come together, and then the integration template follows that. And you can go inside each of these and see the sequence of execution, your TPT scripts being generated. You can follow what kind of scripts have been generated here. And once the execution is completed, you can see a number of records are loaded. Now, this was an on-prem execution. So what happens, the scenario that I mentioned, what happens if we decide that we should move this data, the data coming out of the file and the table, we should move it first to S3 and then maybe load it by transforming that data into based on the transformations or logic written here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to create an Amazon S3 metadata, which I have already created here. You can see there's a Stambia bucket 01. I will quickly go and access that. So Stambia bucket 01, I have currently there is no data in here. So I'm going to go and open my Teradata Express metadata, and I have a specific folder. You can name any folder, but I have, let's say, folder 01. I will drag and drop on this particular Teradata metadata, and I'm going to call it as import storage, and that's all. So I just sort of linked my bucket with the schema, and I can do that for individual table. I can decide this is where the data should go from, or I can have it on the root as well, so that only one bucket is loaded. So that's all. So you don't do any change in your mapping, in your designs, or anywhere in the process, in your templates. You just with the metadata driven approach, you can launch your execution. Again, so I'm using pretty much the same file, the same data coming from the database. So I will not see any inserts or updates, etc. And then you can go into your load templates, and then you can see that it checks for the storage. It finds S3. It generates the TPT script using the access module and everything, and then it loads the data. So what we see here is, without doing any code change, even without doing any design change in your mappings, we have created the templates so that it's completely metadata driven. Tomorrow you decide you have Azure and you want to move to Azure all your source data. It's just a drag and drop, and your designs would act based on those instructions. So with this, I move on to the next topic, which is the fact that Stambia is a unified solution. So now let's discuss about what's changing in terms of the data we are dealing with today. What we are seeing is a lot of complex integration scenario. These are not your traditional ETL scenarios. Rather, they deal with a lot of, you can say, a new type of data sources, semi-structured, unstructured data that is outside, running outside your business. And as well, you need to set up various different pipelines to capture data in batch, real-time streaming, etc. So you have plenty of different, practical scenarios to deal with right now when it comes to delivering it to the customers. And therefore, you have a bunch of, technology stack As you can see, we are currently using a lot of open source technologies in our landscapes to fulfill a lot of requirements surrounding real-time and streaming processes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to another quick demo, which involves Kafka Spark streaming. In this demo, you will see that through a simple mapping, you can set up your streaming process. And I mentioned again, without writing any single piece of code, you just create your mappings, you set up a structured streaming application, and then through the templates, that application would be called or would be created during execution time and will be executed. So let's just quickly jump on to the designer back again. So just to give you a sense of the demo. So what I'm going to do is on my laptop, I have this mapping, which I will execute it. I will connect to a remote server based in France, where we have all the good things, installed and configured. So we have Kafka, we have Spark, and what we will do is from my machine, I will publish some JSON messages, and then the Stambia mapping will use that consumer as a source, and it will fire up this Spark streaming application, which will then stream data to on one side to an HDFS in form of files, and on the other hand, it will load a table as well in parallel. So when I go to my designer, I will quickly open this particular mapping. As you can see that it's kept very simple. You can see if I link it to the editor, this is my source. It is a consumer. If I open this consumer, it is subscribed to topic underscore traces. And this is my bootstrap servers on the remote server. So I have the metadata configuration. Then I have Spark. I move the data to Spark and have the structured layout using Kafka to Spark templates. And then I load the table using structured streaming, again, a templatized solution, and move this same data to HDFS through a set of different templates. I will quickly consult this table on the remote server just to check if this has any data. Yes, it is empty right now. So let's get started. Before that, again, quickly, let's check if anything is running on my. Yes, so I have nothing running. I just quickly check whether the customer billing HDFS directory is there. It's not there. So now that I've verified everything, I can just sorry, I will cancel this. I'm sorry. I have to connect to my runtime on the remote server. So this is my remote server. I connect to the runtime. Right now, I was connected to the local runtime. And now I can execute, launch the execution on that runtime. As you can see that all those templates of loading Spark and then staging and then the streaming are sequenced once you execute and are ready to execute. And you will see that the execution will get this started, and the customer billing on both sides, one HDFS and on the RDBMS, will now be ready for streaming. So I'll just verify whether the application master has started, and it has. And when I open it, I can go and just verify whether it has fired up these two active jobs. Right now they are running. Now what I do is I have the Kafka installed, so I'm gonna publish some messages for this. You can see topic underscore traces. I have this producer. So I start this and it should connect, yes. And now I'm going to publish a bunch of records. You can see this is a customer detail and some billing summary, billing related records. I'm going to, publish this really quickly. Okay, let's go, there goes my first message. Oops. And okay, so with this, I will let's quickly, refresh on the Spark side. You can see that now we have completed several jobs. If we go to the Hue part and refresh the temp section, the temp directory, we have a customer billing directory, and we have those two records that we have published. And one of them, as we have seen, Jason Gibbs related record. We go to the Stambia mapping, so I can consult that table again. And you have in the table, squaring still, yeah. So you have on the table with the update timestamp those messages. So you can imagine a producer which is sort of publishing records again and again and again. You have a producer, you just fire up this particular mapping quickly, connect to the consumer, and create a very simple design. You are not handling a lot of code here. You are more in a drag and drop. Yes, you have to write some of the transformations. Let's say some kind of data has to be transformed before it lands into the sync. So you can do that, but majority of the code are being sort of prepared in the backend, and the Spark application, streaming application, is prepared and submitted on the server through this simple GUI based mapping. So this is a classic example. Of course, we have touched Kafka, Spark streaming, HDFS. There are plenty of technologies. Yes, we can work with those as well. So moving from a unified solution, the last topic that I have is an interesting migration tool that we have recently developed. It is a migration tool that takes all your complex BTEQs or SQL scripts, and it will you execute with 2-3 steps, and you have a Stambia GUI based mappings, which could be something that you can really easily manage. The migration approach is pretty simple, kept pretty simple. You initialize, migrate, and then the validation part where you run things inside Stambia to make sure an apple-to-apple comparison of if everything is fine, you are receiving the same kind of data, etc. So all we need, or all this integration tool needs, are two things: the metadata files. That means we connect to Teradata. You have like several tables inside your BTEQs. We want the information of them, so we reverse engineer that. We need, of course, the BTEQ script or the SQL script. The migration tools takes that, runs it, and comes out with the GUI based mapping. So this is a pretty simple sort of approach. It shortens the time. It sort of automates the entire process of manually sort of thinking out a GUI design out of a BTEQ. In the next demo, this is the last demo I'm going to do. I'm going to take a BTEQ script, and then I will do some small changes. I'll walk you through how things are executed and converted into a Stambia GUI mapping. So I moved to a different designer in this case, and I have several projects here. All I need if I have to start my migration is to just fill in the input folder. As I said, I need the metadata information, so I have already configured that. This is my target table. These are my source tables. A lot of them are joined. A lot of them are A1 and A2 have a union, C1 and C2 have a union, etc. So there's a lot of logic written inside the BTEQ. So the next step, as I said, I need the BTEQ. So we need to have the BTEQ in the form of a file inside Stambia. And this BTEQ could be the most complex BTEQ. We can work with a lot of complexity. If you can see that in this BTEQ, we are dealing with aggregations, unions, left outer join, and a special case where, let's say, we are taking data from unit B. There is a left outer join, and there is a union or all which has been commented. This happens frequently in BTEQ. We have written. If you've written, you know that we comment a lot of code now and then based on the requirement or based on any change. So it's built keeping that in mind. So I have these two with me. So what I'm going to do is I also have a parameter file. So this is a user parameter file. What it does is it helps in customization. So I run the initialization step. I will have this Excel populated with all the metadata information. So let me do that. Right now it's empty. So let me execute the initialization process. So I go to the actual executables. This is my initialization process. So as I said, Stambia will then have all the metadata information collected and populated into the Excel for the users. Then if they need to decide there is some change that they want to do during the migration. So you can see that it has executed now. So we can quickly access the user parameter file, and it has the schema details. You can have several schemas inside your BTEQ. It doesn't care. It will have the information of all your tables and columns in here. In this case, I don't have too much. I just have to tell this parameter file that my default schema remains this, because this is the only schema. If you have several schemas, you can quickly tag them and sort of instruct for the next migration phase. So now I will just run. So that was that one change I had to do. So now I run the migration process. Again, these are processes that can also absorb customization. Of course, that is a very wide topic. A demo catered to just fulfill or go in depth on this migration tool. We can answer several questions on the customization part. We can write a lot on the user parameter Excel, so that you can achieve something, not just exact copy, but you can customize a few pieces here and there. So once this migration kicks off, it again goes through, and now it builds Stambia models. So you can see that it's generating some set of files. And in my workspace, when I execute, when I sort of refresh it, I can see that now I have something which shows me a warning, which just says that I have a new model built. You want to upgrade the model based on the current designer. I will do that. It will upgrade the mapping model and warnings will go off. I go into my folder based on your script name. Of course, you can customize that also, and then it creates a mapping and a process. So process, because I will open the process first, because when talking about BTEQs, there are pre-executions, pre-SQLs written, and then post-SQLs, and in between there is the actual insert logic or update logic or whatever. So you can see that the insert logic is here, and first there is some parameterization that has been done out of a SQL. There is a delete, then we execute the actual insert statement, and then we collect stats. So it has been organized in the series based on the BTEQ. When we open the mapping, your entire insert logic, let me arrange this so that it's more visually understandable, and I will put it on full screen. So now you can see that your A1 and A2 with bunch of filters, you can see are done union. This is set 1, this is set 2. And if I click on this box, I have the union all here. And similarly, you have a lot of unions going on. Once these unions are done, you can see there is a join. The join conditions are here. It's a left outer join. You can quickly verify what kind of join we have made. And specifically for the example of unit B, we can see that unit B is the only one from which we are extracting data. There was a union all which was commented for B_2 unit, which is not considered. So anywhere if your BTECs have comments or you have sort of commented a logic, it will also consider that. And then you have the target management summary. You will have the integration template. Again, you can, after you have done, you can say almost 95% of the job is done, you can tweak it. You can make it as understandable as possible or make some customizations. So as you can see, this saves a lot of time if there is a chance of moving to a more GUI oriented logic that you can manage easily. Mostly the question is whether we can migrate in a short time or not, or do I have to have a 6 months or 7 months running project to just do that? This is something that can simplify and really quickly translate all those logics. So with that, I'm going to conclude the webinar. What my thoughts are, where we can go from here is, of course, the fact that there are topics that are something that you need more details, you need in-depth overview on that. So you can always request for a demo. And then the fact that we can also jump onto a proof of concept if you have a use case ready and you want to test out Stambia, how it works. And so you can also reach out to us if there is already proof of concept. Now I will hand it over to you, Hector, and so that we can address some questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Beba. Very nice presentation, and well, it's very useful for everybody here in this webinar. I have some coming questions. I'm going to start reading some of them, and please, you can type your questions and while I'm reading this one. Okay. So the first one is telling you, do you support just SQL also? Can this be used to convert them into Stambia mapping?
Okay. Oh, okay. So yes. So we have built the migration tool, keeping a lot of things around in mind around BTECs in Teradata. But yes, those BTECs have SQL queries. So if you have a pure SQL script that you are currently running or managing manually, or set of SQL script in terms of any standard database, standard SQL, that can also be as a source we can use. We can use the metadata inside it, and we can, with the same kind of execution, we can turn those into Stambia mappings. So yes, I mean, a shorter answer would be yes. But just to understand, yes, we can work on any complex SQLs as well.
Okay, very good. The next one is, are there some exception or reservation in the case of BTEQ migration tool?
As I said, so we have sort of tested this for a lot of complex scenarios with BTECs with a lot of complexity and a lot of logics written. What we suggest is usually in a project is we divide them to a simple BTEC or a simple SQL, medium complexity, and high complexity. So high complexity is where we have seen that usually 80 to 90% of the conversion is done, and that's when the parameter file comes in, where you can have So again, in high complexity situations, it will not be just one execution and you have the GUI. You might need to tweak the GUI at few places. But then again, considering the kind of complexity we have seen, it's pretty simple in terms of when comparing to a manual, task of converting them.
Okay. Could you please provide a recording of this webinar after completion? Yes, we already mentioned that in the beginning. We are going to receive the webinar recording part. And can TPT scripts be migrated as well?
So no, so TPT scripts cannot be migrated, but we can think of it because ultimately there is a SQL inside. Yes, we started with BTEX because there was this sort of thing that, okay, data ingestion is not a problem, but after that there's a lot of BTEQ. But yes, at times you have a lot of TPT scripts. I think that can also be. So we don't have that currently, but now that we have created this migration tool, I think TPT and other scripts could be something that can be now easily done.
Okay.
Based on our experience.
Okay, may the complement of this question is asking about macros and store procedure execution in BTEQ will be handled as well?
So calling the stored procedures, yes. Calling the macros, yes. When it comes to, if I understand this question, so if it comes to, converting a stored procedure, that is again is in our roadmap, but currently it's not. But if you are calling the stored procedures, calling macros, yes, everything will be, as you see, as you saw, that there's a mapping and then there is a process. So the process will make sure that apart from that insert or update the SQL logic, anything as a pre-statement or post-statement of that will also be covered inside the process.
Okay, good. Well, in the part of the demo, we're using a one version, and the question is if we are certified against Vantage. We can handle Vantage in this process.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Yes, if we are certified against Vantage for Teradata Vantage.
Are we okay? So right now we are not. We are in partnership with Teradata, but the certification is something that is in process.
Okay, yeah, I can complement that, telling that we are working with the technical team with the Teradata, and we can making a lot of efforts to communicate all the part Vantage, and we can do this part of this proof of concept side. So we can talk about this and special requirement with the clients, but we can go for that. This is one of the benefits that we have because we are a software development of the solution. So we can go and we can present this kind of integration. The other question is, well, we lost the voice when you are answering something about the exception of reservation of the case of BTEQ. Can you repeat a little bit a summary of this?
Oh, sure. So again, as I said, it only depends on the, so we have three categories of any SQL or BTEQ. One is a simple one, a simple logic that can be, without a doubt, it can be converted and you can start using those mappings. This one, I can categorize it as a medium complex. And then we have dealt with, while we were creating this tool, we actually took a lot of very complicated or complex BTEQs. So what we have seen is that's why we introduced the idea of parameterizing few things, providing it via the parameter file and then migrating. And since this is iterative migration, so it's not something that you run once and then you have to do it from scratch. It is iterative, so it will keep adding. The moment you change something, So you can sort of tweak the BTEQ scripts offline and then run again. So the high complexity, yes, you might have to run it twice or thrice, depends on the complexity. But we have made we can say we have made some open doors here and there so that we can it can be a flexible process when it comes to high complexity.
Okay. Let's do one more question because we are over the time. So it's
Okay.
yes, how do you support the file streaming?
So yes, so file streaming, let's just say you have an unstructured file coming in. So with Stambia, what we have done is you can do it through Spark streaming, as well as we have a file connector which out of the box supports streaming. So whether it's a batch mode, you are going to get a file on so and so time interval, or you are constantly getting files. So we have the capability pre-built, so you can stream the file data. You can have the mapping configured in a way that when you start the execution, it will keep looking for the files. So if you want specifically Spark to do that, we have the template for that. Otherwise, in terms of the connector, the file connector, we have the capability to sort of have the streaming option by itself.
Okay, very good. Yes, we are running out of time. We have a couple of questions that we're going to be follow afterwards, and I just want to let you know that we can help you to provide a POC and demo of your specific companies, and we are open to do that and to be in contact with us. You are going to receive the recording session of this webinar, and well, thank you, Beba, for your presentation. We are in this process, and well, thank you everybody to join us, and we hope to see you next time. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you so much, folks. Thank you. Bye bye.